Hi, I'm Lee Schilling. I've been a physician for over 45 years, and I just learned about 4 years ago that stuff I wasn't taught in med school. In med school, we're just taught to diagnose and treat. We're not taught to prevent, and that's probably the most important role that a doctor plays, is to prevent his patients from getting sick. We're taught primarily to diagnose and treat. It's important to know how to diagnose and treat, but wouldn't it be even better to know how to prevent and even cure, especially the chronic diseases? What doctors need to know isn't just how to treat cancer and heart disease. We need to know how to help you keep from getting them in the first place. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in this series that'll be coming up on a weekly basis, and also about where to get free, accurate information. Now, if you were walking down a path and you saw this, what would you think? Wouldn't it be better if there wasn't a sign? I'm showing you this to suggest that we do need to know things that we don't know. If your car won't start, you need to know why to be able to fix it. If you don't know what's good for your health, how can you have the best health? And that's what our conversations are going to be about. If you live as long as you can, we're all going to be faced with dying. At the end, how much choice will you want to have? Where do you want to be? At home? At the hospital? And who'll know ahead of time what you want? Who would you want to be in charge of things? The time to think about it is now. This video has to do with the end if you're in an intensive care unit.
Many elderly patients are ending up in ICU at the end of their lives. Dr. Peter Saul, a specialist at John Hunter Hospital, talks about the medicalisation of death.
It was permissible at one time to die of old age, which is a perfectly understandable thing, but about 20 years ago you couldn't write old age on death certificates anymore. And now we all have to die of something. The something we have to die of, by definition, is something reversible. So although we talked about pneumonia as being an old man's friend and just a way of dying rather than a disease, these days pneumonia is treatable. So at what point are you allowed to die, and at what point are you allowed to die of something that we could potentially reverse? And this has caused a great deal of confusion at end of life now.
We talk about a good death, and it always seems to be about holding someone's hand as they slip gently into the night. Can you just talk about the experience of someone dying in ICU? How bad can that be?
Well, you're out of control, which is what most people don't want. Nobody will necessarily say what you would have wanted said for you, so you're not only out of control, but people systematically don't do what you want.
Yeah.
So that's bad. But intensive care is also an uncomfortable experience. The pain is experienced by a lot of people in intensive care because of all the tubes and lines we put in. And the stress on your family is very high. So there's 5 times the rate of post-traumatic.
Well, for most of us, it's not your genes or your doctor that determine how long and how well you live. It's you. It's also important to understand that there are trade-offs. You trade the danger of going 120 miles an hour in a car for the thrill, or the danger of getting fat for the wonderful taste of desserts for better health. So what you do determines how well and how long you're here. And you're the one in charge. I'm just the messenger to provide you some information. What do you think about these statements? Are they all true? They're what we and our parents all grew up with and what we teach our kids. One, however, only one is true. Think about that for a minute. What do cows eat? How many things are we taught as we grow up that we never question? A lot of things are being questioned nowadays. The one that's true is, well, it's not number 5. Car accidents and homicides aren't genetic. The only one that is true is number 1. Nobody does die of old age. Everybody dies of disease, as we just recently heard on the video. How do you get a disease? And that's what we're going to be talking about. You have to decide what's worth what and how much you want to be in charge of your own life. Well, let's start with health. What is it? Health is different things to different people. To the World Health Organization, it's one thing, and to Dr. Welch, it's another. Each of us determines our own health, more than our doctors or even our genes. The role of genes has been exaggerated, and this is just beginning to be understood. Some genes are dictators, like those for blue eyes. You don't have a choice about it. But most other genes are turned on or turned off by their environments. And you create that environment. They're determined by what we do more than anything else. That is, by our food and our lifestyles. When you're feeling good, it's easier to strive to live life, as Dr. Welch suggests. The good thing is that usually it's never too late to change either one if it's making us sick. Death is inevitable, so you can't avoid it. You have a say about it if you know what causes disease and what makes it more likely. Food is sacred to many people, like religion. We grow up developing certain habits that are hard to break. I'll tell you about some of the current thinking about nutrition as well as lifestyle and disease as we go along here. And as I said before, it's never too late to try to avoid disease. All of the things on this slide can be affected by what we eat. In many countries, meat and eggs aren't used at all. And there they have very little heart disease. Where obesity is rare, so is diabetes. I'll be showing some videos in these conversations, and that's the reason for this disclaimer. If, however, you have a health issue, check with your own doctor. This is a brief video from the news about our health. Prostate cancer is something many men die with and not from. It gets diagnosed often because the screening for it has improved. However, death rates haven't increased, and that suggests that it's an overdiagnosis.
The average American now carries 23 extra pounds.
Heart disease and stroke will claim the lives of 460,000 American women.
69 grams of fat. You could actually save 12 grams of the fat and half the calories if you simply ate an entire stick of butter.
We're talking about diabetes and hypertension, and bone diseases, osteoporosis.
Prostate cancer is now the most common cancer in American men.
Doctors say we really need to eat less red and processed meat.
And arteriosclerosis and cancer and autoimmune disease.
We have unprecedented amount of type 2 diabetes in our children, and we're starting to see hypertension in our children in grammar school.
In case you're wondering, 2,120 calories.
Clearly, the Western diet is taking a toll. This should serve as a wake-up call. We have a growing problem, and the ones who are growing are us.
Food. It's central to our lives.
This video is by the Australian intensive care doctor we saw earlier on the ICU. How we die is related to diet and lifestyle. Plus, we can guide our children to good health by what we know and teach them. So it's important to be very well informed about both of these things. When he mentioned sudden death in the video, he was referring to young babies and sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. That happens much less now, as he said, but traffic and other accidents and homicides can be sudden deaths, and they're not entirely rare.
Why this is all happening is due to this, and I do have to take you through what this is about. These are the 4 ways to go. So one of these will happen to all of us. The ones you may know most about are the ones that are becoming increasingly of historical interest. Sudden death. It's quite likely in an audience this size, this won't happen to anybody here. Sudden death has become very rare. The death of little Nell and Cordelia and all that sort of stuff just doesn't happen anymore. The dying process of those with terminal illness that we've just seen occurs to younger people. By the time you've reached 80, this is unlikely to happen to you. Only 1 in 10 people who are over 80 will die of cancer. The big growth industry are these. What you die of is increasing organ failure with your respiratory, cardiac, renal, whatever organs packing up. Each of these would be an admission to an acute care hospital, at the end of which, or at some point during which, somebody says enough is enough and we stop. And this one's the biggest growth industry of all, and at least 6 out of 10 of the people in this room will die of this form, which is the dwindling of capacity with increasing frailty. And frailty is an inevitable part of aging, and increasing frailty is in fact the main thing that people die of now. And
I think this slide explains itself, and what I'm trying to show you here is that our bodies do have significant reserve, and you can live with 1 kidney. We've got 2. Same thing with our lungs, but until our lungs lose significant reserve, it doesn't really cause any symptoms. That's also true for our heart, liver, and pancreas, but we just have 1 each of those. By waiting until symptoms develop and reserve destroyed, much less can be done. This is why nutrition affects our health. It can harm if we eat a lot of saturated fat, which can cause atherosclerotic plaques to form in our blood vessels. This can then interfere with oxygen getting to important organs like our heart, kidneys, eyes, and brain. Almost all disease involves blood vessels, which are affected by what we eat. It doesn't have to be harmful. Nutrition can help our health beneficially by making a strong, healthy immune system that fights infections and abnormal or cancer cells. And we all have cancer cells in our bodies every day that our immune system gets rid of when it's a healthy immune system. So in addition to nutrition, lifestyle is also important. Habits such as smoking, drinking excessively, drug use, or not doing these things. And with driving, another lifestyle, do you drive safely or do you speed, text, or drive when intoxicated? Eating, are you overweight? Do you live to eat or eat to live? And then with exercise, do you get regular physical activity? Brisk walking daily is sufficient, maybe a half hour, an hour, or do you sit a lot? 1 out of 3 people 16 and under will develop diabetes during their lifetime if current trends persist. 70% of people diagnosed with diabetes were overweight when they were diagnosed. Most smokers begin when they're teenagers, so that by the time they're middle-aged, a lot of reserve has been damaged, resulting in pulmonary disease, COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema, and lung cancer. And even the non-smokers living with smokers are getting these diseases. Our food habits get established when we're younger, and we usually don't have a lot of choice. It's only later that we can change established habits. So, as you can see here, there are 42 million adult smokers, and almost 500,000 smokers die every year. There are over 3,000 new smokers, all less than 18, still teenagers, and they're the ones who are the most likely to continue. Half the public have major risk factors for heart disease or stroke. That's it for now, and I'll have a new video in a week. If you have any questions, send me an email, and you can see the address at the bottom of the slide there. I'll respond quickly if you do send one. Next time, I'll be talking about how food can help avoid premature death. When we're born, it's possible to estimate how long we'll probably live. If we die before that, it's a premature death. If you live to be 105, well, there's not a name for that other than centurion. Thanks for your attention. See you in a week.